open the aperture and try to look at it a little differently. We're looking at simulation, aviation simulation in a big way. And when I talk to industry about why is it that we don't have full-up, high-fidelity simulators that could replace a flight hour, especially when that costly flight hour helps save not only aircraft life, but also the cost to sustain the aircraft and some of the wear and tear on equipment. Why is it that we don't have that kind of fidelity of simulation out there today? And the answer I get from across the board from industry is you never asked for it, okay? Which is absolutely true. We have asked for procedural trainers. We have a culture that started many years ago where you were handed a handbook and that was how you taught yourself to fly. Then we transitioned to procedural trainers that oriented you and made sure that you had the right kind of procedures down, that you could be safe. But what we've never approached is something that can actually replicate a flight hour, except in limited cases like our E-6Bs out at Tinker Air Force Base, which is a 707 variant. When I was out in St. Louis of late, we talked to the Boeing folks and had a chance to jump in a P-8 simulator, and we are expecting that that simulator will give us the kind of fidelity that can eventually replace a flight hour. If I can replace a flight hour, then it gives me a lot more flexibility when it comes to training. I can transition to more complex war modes. I can use the facilities 24 hours a day. I can use it on weekends. If it's transportable, I can take it overseas. So it gives us a lot of efficiencies that we can start to look towards in the future. So that's one of the areas that we're looking for to try to manage ourselves as we look at a more austere budget environment. The second area is the Naval Aviation Enterprise. And that is a collaboration of the SysCom, my staff, and the Marine Corps Aviation to try to look at data to ensure that we understand what the data is telling us when it comes to parts, when it comes to gaps, when it comes to utilization and usage rates, and try to look for efficiency. So do we need more valves and actuators, or do we just need to repair the ones we have faster, or do we just need to take the ones that are waiting to be packaged up and mailed off? Just need to do that on a daily basis instead of a weekly or a monthly basis. There's lots of benefits that we're getting from the Naval Aviation Enterprise. There's contributions that they can give us that allow us to make better decisions, and we can lean out some of our supply base in order to get the right efficiency for the right effect at the right time. Now, looking in the future, we can't sit back and just count on all these transitions to these new type model series and think that, okay, we've got it set and we're good for probably the next decade or so. We need to look at unmanned aircraft and what other ways can we increase and enhance the effects of our ships at sea. So we have VTUAV, the Fire Scout, the vertical takeoff unmanned vehicle. And when we looked at our LCS, and we said we have an H-60 Sierra, 2 of them, or Romeo, and these 2 helicopters are going to go out and do, in some cases, there would be comm relay or EO, electrical optical, or IR, infrared, basically be the eyes, or use their radar to be the eyes for the LCS over the horizon. And other times, they're going to actually be towing something, or dipping something, or transporting something. So we looked at the opportunities and said, well, is it more efficient if we can take one of those helicopters and make it an unmanned, and for a fraction of the cost and no crew, can that do some of the comm relay and some of these missions, and then save the Sierra or the Romeo for the heavy lifting, for the important stuff? So that's an example of where aviation looked at unmanned aircraft, and we're going to use the same air crew that is with that deck to man or to control that unmanned helicopter and get us into the future. So Similarly, with the VADMs and the P-8, we looked at how much of the P-8's mission, how much of the maritime mission is just out flying around trying to build a picture, trying to just understand what the maritime environment is. Do I need a crew in a 737 to do that? And we thought the answer was no. If we can take Global Hawk, adapt the radar, and make it so it's marinized, then let that sit up there 24/7, and perhaps that can give us our situation awareness, and then we'll use the P-8s to come in for the finish, some of the processing and the finish piece, because our unmanned Global Hawk derivative is not armed. Similarly, we're looking at taking an X-47B and doing a demonstration off the carrier to try to figure out what and how can we benefit an air wing with a complement of longer range unmanned vehicles. So we're going to do a tailless demonstration. It's going to do its first taxi at Edwards in December, and within the next couple of years we're going to do a carrier demonstration, and then our intent is in the mid-teens, 17, 18 time frame, is to have a group of these that we can send out to a carrier to do missions that include ISR and some limited strike. Okay. This is a great news story for aviation. It's a great news story for the Navy because it means the sea base is even more relevant in the future than it is today. So if we can enhance the sea base with some of this technology, then we show not only how brilliant we are to have carriers and to have these platforms that last 50 years that are adaptable, but we can also do it in a way that doesn't infringe on the territorial sovereignty of other nations. As the Air Boss, my primary responsibility is organize training and equipping the fleet to make sure that our carriers and our carrier air wings, our maritime patrol, and our helicopter fleet has everything they need to fight the war, everything they need to transition to the future, and that they're postured in a way to be efficient and to take on some of these new technologies that are over the horizon. It's an honor to be here with you today. My last few assignments in Washington helped give me I think an understanding of the landscape of what some of the challenges are. But being out here and embraced by the community is not just priceless, it's given me a dimension of support that I wasn't able to accurately capture in words when my predecessor gave me the turnover. He said, not only are you going to love it here, you're going to love the community and you're going to love the support. And watching the activities over Fleet Week, which is actually 2 weeks here, and what you've done over the last 4 months from my observation is incredible. So I want to thank you for your support, and I look forward to your questions. Go ahead. Okay, I'll repeat the question. By repeating the question, I get to do two things. One is I get to make sure that everybody understands what you asked, and I get to say it in a way that I can answer it. The question is, when UAVs are in the fleet, are they going to be operated by enlisted or officers? The answer is going to be both. Okay. Some of the technology right now is point and click. Okay, so I don't need a pilot or a trained aircrew to do point and click technology. But in the meantime, there's some unknowns out there. One is there are some FAA rules that we have to work through. Okay, and we have to prove to leadership outside the Navy as well that we can operate those kinds of aircraft safely in a controlled environment, populated environment, and we can do it with a training track that we would have to make sure the FAA understands. We also want to make sure that we're making the best choice for our ships and our squadrons. If I have a helo det on an LCS that's 28 folks, and the maintainers are still managing 2 unmanned and 1 manned helicopter. The only people that may be left that can fly the VTUAV or manage the console may be the pilots. Okay, maybe that's the only resource that I have. If I try to put an extra weapon system operator or a different rate in there, I just run out and push a maintainer off the ship because I'm limited on space. When it comes to BAMs and some of the bigger UAVs, I was at the Norfolk Grumman facility recently, and there's the technology is there for them to do point and click as well. So they understand that we want the option to do both. And so I can assure you that we're looking at enlisted. I want it to be enlisted wherever we can, because one, it's motivation for you. Secondly is I think it gives us more flexibility in our training. And third, I'm not sure I subscribe exactly to the way some of our other services do this, where you have to go through a whole set of pilot training just to operate a VTUAV or some other unmanned vehicle. So we're still working on that, but we're trying to keep our options open. Yes, sir.
Admiral, a lot of talk lately about the air-sea battle with the Air Force. Can you talk a little bit about those naval aviation missions that might be performed by Air Force working with naval forces under that concept?
I have not been debriefed on a lot of the specifics on the air-sea battle, and I know that there's different classification levels and one of the questions that I asked our rep in DC, who's very involved with it, is that we need to have a storyline to be able to talk about just that, because I know it's still ongoing right now, and I know that it's got very senior participation from the Navy and the Marine Corps and the Air Force, but I'm not at a point where I can offer you insights until I can get something from headquarters that allows us to talk about it in a way that doesn't need to compromise some of the security restrictions that are on the program or on the analysis, and or captures it where they think they're at a point where they can make a final analysis. It's a quiet group. Yes, sir.
Admiral, with Nimitz' anticipated departure for the Pacific Northwest for their dry docking capability, are you at liberty to maybe comment on the long-term prospects for a third aircraft carrier in San Diego?
The answer is no. The question is, what's the outcome of Nimitz, and is there going to be a third? Am I at liberty to discuss the possibility of a third aircraft carrier back here? And I'm not at liberty to discuss that. What I can tell you is, and I'll echo what CNO said at SDMAC about 6 weeks ago, actually about 2 months ago now, that that decision process is at his level, okay? And the leadership has forwarded the information to him, and it's at his level, and we're waiting for them to give us guidance or to take it forward. So it's very much in our scope, very much on our minds right now, but we're not at a point where we can talk about what the resolution is. Yes, sir.
I'm still trying to find out how you got from the Air Force Academy to charge of all naval aviation.
Well, I guess there's no hiding that when it's in your bio. The truth of the matter is, my dad is my grandfather's Army Air Corps.